Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Scott Sinclair. I'm the Senior Manager of Programs here at Cancer and Careers, and I will be your host for this afternoon's webinar. For those of you who are listening in on your phone, please let us know by sending an email to cancerandcareers@cew.org with your name and the phone number that you're dialing in from. That way we can confirm your attendance and make sure that you receive any follow-up information after the webinar. If anyone is new to Cancer and Careers, first of all, welcome. We're glad to have you. We are a national nonprofit and the only program of its kind solely dedicated to empowering and educating people with cancer to thrive in their work environment. On this slide is a list of all of our free programs and services that we offer. Our comprehensive website, available in both English and Spanish, is the heart of everything that we do. There you can find various support services, including our resume review service and access to career coaches. Our educational blog and newsfeed are both rich resources for those who have been diagnosed, their caregivers, employers, healthcare providers. All of them can stay current on topics related to work and cancer. Our free publication library is available in both English and Spanish and provides tangible, easy to digest information on working and looking for work after a cancer diagnosis. And those are available in both PDF and hard copies. We also offer numerous events every year, like this one, from an hour-long webinar to full-day events. And I will come back after Julie's presentation today to tell you a little bit about what we have coming up. For those of you who are seeking continuing education credits today, this slide lists all the organizations that have accredited today's webinar, as well as the required steps for getting a certificate. This information is also available on our website, and a link to the evaluation and the post-test will be shared at the conclusion of today's webinar. So please take a moment, if you have it after the webinar is over, to complete that. If you're not able to do that today, that's fine. We will send an email tomorrow, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern, with links to the evaluation and the post-test. Also, for those of you who are planning to request continuing education credits, our accrediting bodies require us to share this slide to let you know that there are no conflicts of interest to report. Now, as you may know, Zoom has a lot of great features that you can use to interact with this event today, with us and with other attendees. You'll see a chat box in your features panel. Feel free to use the chat box to communicate with others, with our speaker, with our staff and other attendees. However, it's important to note that the chat box is not private and it will show your first and last name. So that's something to be mindful of when and if you are engaging in the chat. You'll also see a Q&A box in that same panel. If you have any questions during Julie's presentation, please drop them into the Q&A box. We will have some time at the end to answer questions. We know that the importance of privacy, so there is an option to submit your questions anonymously in the Q&A box. And we ask you to put your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box. We just might miss them in the chat box, so put them in the Q&A box. And if we don't get to your question today, please send us an email at cancerandcareers@cew.org, and we'll get you an answer as soon as we can. Now, I want to thank, in part from Genentech and P&G Beauty, Cancer and Careers is proud to offer this 10th year of the Balancing Work and Cancer webinar series, which was created to provide anyone whose life has been touched by cancer with concise, targeted information about work-related issues that arise after a diagnosis. Additionally, I would like to thank all of Cancer and Careers' year-round sponsors who support all of our core programs and allow us to continue providing events like these for free of charge. Now, today we are going to focus on a specific element of the job search process, which is networking. In general, networking may tend to make some people feel nervous, but today we're going to make you more comfortable by covering the basics of networking, why it's important, and how to effectively network. Regardless of how you network, it is critical to get comfortable with it as an essential aspect of the job search and has shown time and time again that it is a crucial tool for landing a job. Now, to take us through this topic, I am thrilled to welcome back Julie Jansen. Julie is a speaker, trainer, coach, and author. who has helped thousands of professionals find success and satisfaction at work, as well as find work that is gratifying. Julie is one of our original coaches at CAC. Additionally, Julie is the coach who does our resume review service, so we hope that you will utilize that as well. There'll be questions after Julie is done, so drop any of those into the Q&A box as you think of them. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Julie.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. So today's webinar is going to dig into the how-tos of networking that are effective no matter what. And I will also share some specific tips for networking virtually, which is something we all learned to do during that long pandemic. And as Scott mentioned, we will definitely have time for a Q&A. Let me first say, from a personal note, that networking is, I would say, the single most important skill that I have developed, which has made me successful in business and has greatly enhanced my life through starting my own business, multiple personal crises, 9/11, the Great Recession, and the pandemic. Networking is a ongoing interactive process. It's not a one-off situation, and it's something that I firmly believe needs to be woven into the fabric of your life and your existence, and it becomes a lot easier. And we'll talk about some of the reasons that people are very uncomfortable with it, and I would say the majority of people are uncomfortable with networking for various reasons. But approximately, because this is Cancer and Careers, this is a focus on looking for work primarily. Obviously, networking is useful for many, many things. But approximately 85% of all jobs are found through networking. Yes, you can get plenty of leads from LinkedIn. However, it's also very appropriate and effective to network using LinkedIn in addition to applying to postings. And I would say that 80% of jobs are what are it's called the hidden job market, meaning that the jobs are not necessarily advertised. And most people you meet have 250 contacts at least. And whenever I ask someone, well, how many contacts do you have? People will say, oh, not really that many. There's an author you may be familiar with named Mark Victor Hansen, who said that the average person knows at least 250 people. Each of those 250 people know another 250 people. So then you have access to 62,500 people. Well, you don't need 62,500 people to network effectively. But it's nice to know that that's there. So, and 30% of jobs are usually created through someone who knows you or who introduces you into a company. So the first thing I want to talk about is what gets in your way to networking successfully. Well, there's no doubt that networking is an extremely important business and personal skill. Unfortunately, networking is quite often misunderstood and underutilized. Let's talk about the two things that tend to be the obstacles. The first, of course, is your attitude. There are people who have sort of a fear of networking. They don't know what to say, or they don't know how to do it, or they don't want to look, like they don't know what they're doing, or they're just uncomfortable. Your attitude about networking comes from your experience with others, your own experience. And of course, when you were social distancing, your reluctance or discomfort with networking online was pretty prevalent. And, I still have that conversation with people who were hired remotely and need to network with people in their company. And they really kind of still struggle with it. Other feelings that you might have might be, I hope not, but a disdain about networking and its value. It can kind of have a negative stereotype at times. And why would you want to involve yourself in something that maybe people viewed as negative? There's definitely a lack of understanding about how to network. That's why we're having this webinar today. It's normal to worry about the proper etiquette of networking. And I will repeat this message later. If you treat others the way you want to be treated, with professionalism and courtesy and sensitivity, networking will definitely become easier for you. Then the mentality that you can or should be able to do everything on your own. We are socialized as human beings to be competitive and even compete against each other. And most of you have grown up with a keen sense of individual responsibility. So it's likely that your values have been shaped based on your individual accomplishments, when the reality is, and it's been proven many, many times, that working together, working in concert is much more productive and effective. And then some people might have, and I know I've felt this way sometimes, a lack of confidence about approaching people who are senior to you, or people you don't know. We can be intimidated, for example, by people who have achieved a lot or possess a status that we don't have. And it's easy to think that we don't have anything to offer someone like this. And your cancer experience may have diminished your confidence even more. So it's been proven that attitude drives behavior. So if you do let any of these feelings I've just described dominate you, very simply, you just won't be as successful at networking. So the only way you'll shift your attitude about networking is if you just face your feelings and continue to try it, and you will definitely begin to see very positive results. The other barrier that I've seen, and this is particular to, especially to people who are working and trying to find a new job or trying to find leads or whatever it is time management and organization. It's rare that I ever meet a human being who says, I have enough time for everything I ever need to do. It's almost impossible. So there's always a lot of prioritizing of what's important. And so it's really very important to manage and organize the time that you spend networking. Like, be thoughtful about it, not just plugging it in when you can fit it in, which is probably never. And so when you're probably very familiar with the basic fundamentals of time management, but when push comes to shove, it's all about having little goals, keeping focused, and sometimes really difficult, staying motivated. You don't always reap wonderful results with every single networking contact you have. And in fact, that's something that people find very frustrating, because you don't get an immediate return most of the time from networking. So the best way, as I mentioned, is just weave it into your life, instead of viewing it as another task. And as Ken Blanchard, the very well-known author, said, managing your time isn't really the real issue. Your time is fixed. What you need to do is manage the activities that are consuming your time. And so if possible, use some sort of digital system. It doesn't have to be sophisticated, for organizing and documenting your activity. I like to talk about Jibber Jobber, which is, I think, has a free version and a paid version, which is was intentionally created for job search and for people to organize their networking contacts. And I said that really fast, so I'll just say Jibber Jobber, just the way it sounds, Jibber, Jobber. And you can just look for that online. But if you're just even if you're using Outlook or your smartphone or even Excel, just try really hard to keep it. Yes, Jibber Jobber. Jennifer. And so try really hard to keep it updated with contact info and notes about your conversations and meetings, because you're always going to be trying to move those sort of contacts forward in some productive way. So the interesting thing about networking is that we all do it pretty naturally in our personal lives, whether we realize it or not. I mean, how many times have you asked someone, well, where did you buy that? Who's your accountant? I mean, have you tried that online meal delivery service? I mean, this is simple networking. And for some reason, though, some people have trouble or difficulty transferring this to their professional or work lives or a job search, unless they absolutely have to. And I will tell you that the basic principles of networking have not changed, candidly, other than the digital aspects or technology, and in the entire existence of human beings. So now let's move to what I call the 5 sources of networking. When I first started talking about networking years ago, I used to say, okay, just think of everybody you know and create a list. Well, that's kind of ridiculous and very difficult for people to do. Thankfully, we have LinkedIn, which will be one of the sources for networking, and I'll get into that. But it's easier for people if you sort of break your contacts or potential contacts into buckets. So that's what I did in this webinar. And hopefully it'll make it a little bit easier for you to think about people you can reconnect with or finding new people whom you can network with. So the first is your personal and your professional network. Now, you might argue that that's everybody, but what I'm really talking about are your current contacts, people you currently know, and then popping them into categories. Who are all my friends? Who are my past colleagues? And you can search for them on LinkedIn or Facebook or Insta. Who are former classmates and teachers or neighbors or your kids' friends, parents, or real estate agents or dentists or accountants, and or I mean, I used to network quite a bit with my dentist before he retired. And then write all these people down. Open up a Word document or a Google Doc, as simple as that is, or use a notebook to write them down and search for them, and then invite them to connect with you if you aren't already connected, or to become a friend. And then from now on, when you meet someone new, automatically invite them to connect on LinkedIn. And I had the privilege, very good timing, of attending a conference Friday, Saturday, well, it was Saturday and Sunday in Clearwater Beach, Florida, and I live in Connecticut. So I went this past weekend and thought to myself, wow, I haven't been in an in-person conference situation where I wasn't the speaker in several years, many years actually. And I went to 12 sessions and met, there were about 150 people attending, and it was a wonderful conference. And I was like, oh, am I going to remember how to network? So I'm going to kind of weave in some little tidbits from my experience and what I experience with other people in networking as we move along today. But the next source that I want to talk about, which I mention a lot, is LinkedIn. So if you're someone who's resistant to using LinkedIn, and I'm not talking about having a profile, most people have a profile on LinkedIn at this point, but you're supposed to be using it. So it is quite obviously the most widely used business-oriented social network. If you were able to attend the webinar that I did, I think it was last month or so on LinkedIn, that it's got 600 million members. Not all of them are active, of course, and that it isn't just about adding people to your database, but it's really about using a direct connection, which is a first-degree connection, a second-degree connection. Like I have a client who's in search, and I said, send me your little target list of people that you're trying to get searches from. And I went through her list, and it took me, maybe 10 minutes. And then there were two people that I was able to connect her with because I had second connections, or rather first connections to those people. And it made me feel good, and she was thrilled. Who knows what will come of it, but it's a wonderful tool for that. So as I mentioned, you want to send invitations for people to connect with you. When I went to the conference, people still had business cards. And I not collected, and anybody I talked to, I tried to get a business card from. There were a few people who didn't have them. And I think I have about 20 cards of people I talked with at lunch or whenever. And I haven't had time this week, but I'm going to spend some time in the next few days just connecting with them on LinkedIn, customizing my invitation. And then we all had talked about ways that we can help each other because we all do something similar in the business world. So that's what LinkedIn is really awesome for. But just remember that LinkedIn isn't just for you to get help, it's also for you to help others. So I use LinkedIn to help my clients by introducing them to my connections much more than I use it for myself, which probably is not a good idea, but it's a good example of reciprocity. And it's important to remember that LinkedIn is not intended to be a replacement for face-to-face networking. It certainly was during the pandemic, but we're out of that pandemic now. So yes, use LinkedIn, but still try to focus on creating face-to-face opportunities while using LinkedIn as a foundation to introduce yourself. And also, if you are job hunting, I always want to remind people of the open to opportunities section that you want to fill in. And one more thing about LinkedIn is that you can download all of your connections into an Excel spreadsheet. And people sometimes don't realize that that's an opportunity for you to kind of look at all your connections and remember who you haven't connected with recently. So the next source for networking is what I call loosely influential people, if I can pronounce that. And these are people whose jobs, not that they're so influential, but that they are people whose jobs involve networking all the time. So this is contacting people who know key people. They must network as part of their jobs. They're either heads of trade and professional associations, business consultants, salespeople, people in nonprofits who are in development or fundraising, and people that work in the government and have to run for office. Those are all examples, and people in their own businesses who have to develop business for themselves as well. So these are all people who know a lot of people, and they tend to be much more open-minded about networking with others and helping others, I've noticed. So these are really good people to keep in mind when you want to try to, meet more people and be introduced. So the next one is people and companies in the media. So identifying needs and opportunities and trends through information that you garner from business articles and company PR pieces, and even research on different company websites. There's people in the news announcements. Buddy, wherever you live in the United States, you likely have some sort of local business journal. I know bizjournals.com there's a lot of journals across the United States. There's also the calendar of events and where they list speakers, and speakers tend to meet a lot of people as well. So maybe planning to attend networking roundtable sessions. Oops, I don't know, the slides just started moving for some reason. Let me see here. I don't know, I didn't even touch it. That's bizarre. So let me go backwards a little bit. Forgive me here. Oh, here we go. Okay. Forgive me, everyone. I don't know why that happened, but it did. Okay. Back to people and companies in the media. So that said, this is any newspaper I'm in the outside of New York City. There's something called Crane's New York, which is a very popular publication. And those are great sources for you to identify people whom they may be a little bit on the celebrity status, but it's okay to potentially reach out to them. And I also like when I go to conferences, like I went to this conference and I went to 12 sessions, but there were other sessions, probably 6 sessions I didn't go to because I chose one. And so a couple of the speakers at the other sessions that I didn't attend, I plan on reaching out to for a specific reason, even though I didn't attend their session. The next source is what I call trade associations and organizations. There is a professional or trade or whatever you want, business organization for every single thing you could imagine, for people, banana growers, to zookeepers, to diamond graders, you name it, and most conventional types of jobs as well in industry. So expand your network. It's great when you meet people who have similar professional or personal interests. And it's kind of fun to, go to these kinds of things. So there's industry and professional groups, there's civic and cultural and religious and government groups. And so hobby kinds of groups, a lot of these are online still, and a lot of them are in person. But one of the things I like about going also to a group where it's very focused on a specific either industry or interest or whatever, is I like to go when I actually I'm not a person who's involved in whatever that is. And then I stand out. I used to do that all the time when I was in sales. I'd go to these sort of disparate groups where I didn't do whatever it is everyone else did. And they'd all be like, well, why are you here? And I would say, well, I just wanted to meet some different people. And you're kind of not a threat. You're not competition. And it's kind of actually very entertaining and fun. So the next group of people would be recruiters and search firms. So You can have challenges with recruiters and search firms because sometimes if you don't have a lot of experience working with them, you may think that if you reach out to someone who's a recruiter, whether they're an internal or in-house recruiter, or they're actually an external search firm or a contingency firm, that they should respond to you. And they often don't unless they see a reason to. They are very focused on jobs that they are trying to fill. So they're not, their MO is not marketing candidates. It's highly unlikely that that will ever happen. But it's a good idea if you're in a job search and you think, like, if you're a career changer, it's not going to be likely that you'll be placed by a search firm or a contingency firm. But if you're a remote control operator and you want another remote control operator position, then you definitely can reach out to recruiters who place remote control operators and send them a LinkedIn connection invite, but customize it. Always customize your LinkedIn connection invites and ask them to join you in your network. I always say, if you're in a field or an industry, talk to your buddies and your friends and your colleagues about recruiters that they've interacted with over time and ask them for referrals to recruiters, because everybody knows one recruiter at least. But don't be offended if you do reach out to recruiters and you don't receive a response, or if they just accept your connection invite and they don't respond other than that, just for the simple reason that and the other thing that's good about recruiters and search firms is if they do contact you when you're working, always try to make an effort to help them find candidates for whatever the roles are that they're trying to fill, because they'll remember that. I actually got a referral last week from a recruiter who used to call me all the time for potential candidates. I think he worked in the human resources, and I honestly, I kind of forgot about him. And then he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Julie, my sister and my daughter need resumes." And first of all, I was really surprised to hear from him. He was retired and he referred me to his sister and his daughter. So only because he remembered me, because whenever he would call me, I would say, "Let me think, Frank, let me think about who I know." And I would work very hard at trying to refer people to him. So that's another good resource for you. So those are the 5 sources for networking. Now let's segue to, how do you invite people to network with you? Because this can sometimes feel a little bit awkward. So I am a fan of, organizing and structuring on a level, and then, just developing specific skills that will enable you to feel more comfortable about networking. So with rare exception, almost every day, I send an email, I text someone, I message someone, or I invite someone to connect with me on LinkedIn. Might just be one person. If I'm lucky, it's 2 people. I have been doing that throughout the majority of my career, unless I'm on vacation or something extenuating. I definitely will comment loosely on LinkedIn posts or updates, and I even make phone calls once in a while, not too often, because people find that a little bit unfriendly now. But I've done this regardless, and it's really helped me stay in touch with people without having any major agenda. At the end of this webinar, I'll be sharing some ideas for you about what ways that you can stay in touch with someone and feel like you have something to say, because that's always a little bit challenging too. But so here's some guidelines, and you're inviting someone probably not to a face-to-face networking meeting, but definitely either a video or phone conversation. So you kind of think about, well, what do I need, or what kind of person do I want to meet? And then you reach out to 6 people you know well, and I randomly chose that number 6, that you haven't talked to, or someone that you'd like to meet, or someone that was referred to you. And then they might have information, a resource, and insight for something that's going to fit your need. In the first sentence, you explain what you're looking for, and this is easier to do with someone you know, and why you're reaching out to them. then what you want to do is compliment them, ask them about themselves, make it clear that you don't want to waste their time, that it'll be brief. Give them a very brief description of what's going on in your situation, either your background, your future goals, just something that isn't, too detailed. And then after that, offer sort of, I'd like to schedule a Zoom meeting, or people call it Zoom calls. I don't know why, but I notice that's a vernacular. And perhaps send a few questions to you in an email at your convenience, or just keep it very spontaneous and just keep everything brief. Now, you're doing this generally, maybe not a text. It depends how well you know the person, certainly an email, and try to use some sort of interesting subject line to increase the likelihood that the person will read your message. I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about subject lines. Some of them are hits, some of them are not. People don't always respond, as we well know, but that's okay. And then, so you're kind of structuring this outreach. And if you're in a job search, you should be doing this on a regular basis, kind of going through this process that I've just outlined. This is my most significant tip about networking, and I firmly believe in this. Reciprocity is key to successful networking. The essence of networking is first and foremost focusing on the other person. So to give you an example, I met a guy named Steve at the conference, and nice guy. We were chatting. And I said, when this was a conference for expert witnesses. So I'm a vocational expert. I started this business in 2019, and really fascinating people, a lot of doctors, nurses, engineers, not too many vocational experts. There are only 3 of us. But this guy is an expert witness for car, what are they called when you inspections? It's very odd. Like, so accidents could occur. There's a lawsuit that's happening because something went awry with a car sale or something. Very specific. And I was thinking, wow, that's really odd. I never met anyone like that. And I said to him, Steve, I've been thinking since we met, and I know a lemon law. I know an attorney in Connecticut who was my client, who's a lemon law attorney. Would that be someone who would be interesting for you to meet? And he goes, yes. I don't know too many attorneys that just specialize in lemon law. And he lives like in Colorado, So I am going to make that introduction. And boy, was he like my best friend after that, And then he started saying, well, Julie, how do you think I could help you? And it was just like so organic. It was awesome. And it was because, not to pat myself on the back, but it was because I really intentionally thought, which is what I always try to do, how can I help this person? Whether it's just unsolicited advice, or, even better, a connection. So when you're, I still use Post-it notes. I don't know how many of you do, but I put a Post-it note on, somewhere near my workspace when I'm trying to remember something. When it's networking, you want to say, who do you know who, or how can I help you? And you just have that sort of in your mind that you're focused on. And then when you're, and people know intuitively when you're really trying to identify with them, and when you aren't, when you're being sincere. You're not going to ask someone how they're doing or if you can help them if you don't really care. You're not going to be able to listen or respond appropriately. And a big part of empathy is asking thoughtful questions and really paying attention to the answers. And if you do this first, you'll become much more comfortable eventually introducing your agenda. And this is what makes networking interactive instead of just one-sided. So, and then the other thing, an exercise I have my clients do when I'm helping them to learn how to become more comfortable networking is sit down and think about all the things that you have that are skills or unique talents or knowledge, special knowledge or expertise. And, people will often, especially if they're feeling like lack of confidence or in a job search, they don't like networking, they're kind of like, I don't know, I don't really have anything to offer. Of course you do. Every single human being does. And so just sit down and make a short list of all the ways that you could potentially be a resource to others. Like, one of my weird things that I don't think a lot of my people know is I am incredibly organized. So this is, I organize drawers when I'm feeling stressed. I organize closets when I'm feeling stressed, and it calms me down and centers me. So everybody in my life that knows this about me is constantly asking me for help on, can you just come over and look at my closet, or look at this, or look at that? And I love doing that. I actually even tried to start a business doing that, but it was so frustrating because there were people that were like kind of hoarding office supplies, and it just stressed me out too much. So, but that said, everybody has unique talents. And so just think ahead of time of what those could be. And you never know when you can pull something out of your pocket and say, you know what, maybe I could help you with that. And then just don't expect anything from the people you contact or interact with. You'll often be surprised by who helps you. I can't say that many of my brother maybe, but many of my family members have ever tried to help me find clients. And that's not their role. I get it. I'd rather have their love and support. But the truth is, it's always this search guy that I haven't talked to in years who just suddenly referred two family members to me. So you just don't know where those leads are going to come from. And that's why you want to treat everybody equally. And one of the things I have to offer is I do have a very massive network. And I actually have a very close friend who was laid off from her job end of last year. And I said to her, Lisa, there's something and I can be very candid with her. I said, something I don't understand. I'm one of your friends with the largest network, and she works in a similar type function than I do, but for a company. And I said, I don't understand why you haven't sent me a list of companies that interest you, or why you haven't asked me who I can refer you to. I'm happy to do that, but I need your guidance. And she still hasn't done it. And I don't understand why, but she says she's very actively networking. And she just said, yeah, Julie, you're right. You're right. I don't know why. That's crazy. I don't know why. So that's why you have to really organize and structure and take notes and document, because you can't network effectively just sort of off the top of your head or randomly, because there's too many moving parts to the networking process. Okay, so now let's go to everybody's favorite. Some people are pretty good at this, making small talk and conversation. It's just as important online, on video, and in email, if not more so, because it's a little bit easier to do it in person, because you can kind of look around your environment and see something or find something, or know that there's some safe current event that you could talk about. But when you're online on video, it just feels a little bit artificial. So I'm also a fan of preparing small talk and conversation. And what I used to do when I would speak quite a bit in person is I would, travel to wherever the town or city was, and I'd look at the newspaper online, and I'd find some little funny story and introduce that story, usually kind of a feel-good thing. And I would talk about that first. And people are all like, oh, it's interesting. I didn't know that. Or yeah, I heard about that too, But it's just, unfortunately, with online video networking, it's harder to come across as approachable and create rapport and develop trust, unfortunately. So you have to work a little bit harder at it. And that's why planning some topics, and quite obviously, we know with the world as it is, politics, religion, global conflicts, and many other things are not great things to talk about. So what I did here with this slide is it doesn't have to be these questions, but just to help you kind of think of topic areas. So a question about work: what was your very first job? I once had a job as an Easter bunny, and in a mall. It was a horrible job. It was because I had to hop in this heavy fursuit to this candy store and fill my basket up, and the kids weren't very nice to me. They were trying to yank to see, because you couldn't tell what my gender was. But it's fun to talk about, entertainment, everybody loves. There's so much good programming. I mean, who doesn't love? Most people love watching, binge watching shows. Food, most people like food. Travel. When I do icebreakers, sometimes I'll do an icebreaker, like, if you can go somewhere for 6 weeks, where would you go? And most people like to travel, and so they like to talk about where they go. I last summer I went to the country Georgia, and most people either hadn't heard of it, or would say to me, why would you go there? And that was a good icebreaker for me for a good 6 or 8 months. And then life story. I mean, I don't know if I'd ask this one, but what's one of your hidden talents? But sometimes people, when they do icebreakers, they like to talk about something unique about themselves. And people do love talking about themselves. So that's for sure. Most people do. And then, we talked about this a little bit earlier, or mentioned it, about approaching people who are senior to you. We all have imposter syndrome at times in our lives, whether it's in business or personally, and that's very, very normal. So my premise for approaching people who are a little bit more senior or credentialed or celebrities or whatever is, just try to follow some steps, especially if you're doing it digitally. The direct approach, obviously, if you can ever be introduced by someone, that's key. And that's the easiest way to approach anyone, of course, no matter who they are. But if you can't, you can't. And just like reaching out and saying, I so appreciate your advice, your input, your insight about, or I'm working on expanding my networking in the XX industry, and I'd be honored if you would be part of it. You'll definitely want to adapt your style to match this person's style, and being clear again about what your skills and expertise are, and always have like a little simple agenda if you are fortunate enough to be able to get an audience with that person. And by the way, these are the same guidelines that you would use if you were trying to network with people who are senior within your organization if you are working. This is advice I often give to people in their 20s who are in their first or second job, and they want to expand their network internally, and they just haven't been able to get exposure to senior people. And, again, they're really trepidatious about reaching out to someone who's senior. And you've heard the expression, we all put our pants on the same way, which mostly is true. And then after your video or phone call or whatever it was that you did, follow up with them. You're saying thank you, of course. You're reminding them of one of the things that you talked about in your conversation. And then you still can offer to help a senior person with something. We all have issues and problems and challenges. Not one human being is exempt from that. And so just try to remember that. So let's kind of get into a little bit of the networking etiquette that people really do struggle with. There's no rules, but I've learned over time, there are definitely guidelines that are more effective than others. Never assume that people are acknowledged or appreciated. One of the things I love about working with Scott is he's just so appreciative of me and what I do, and he's complimentary, and it's so sincere, and I really appreciate that about him. Anyone with whom you've spent more than 15 minutes in any way, shape, or form, or even if it's just a brief text, acknowledge them. Be professional. Use the person's name. Now, I had an experience back to the conference I just attended where I met a woman who is a vocational expert. She was one of the 3 of us that were vocational experts. And I said, oh, I was all excited. You're a vocational expert. Where are you? And she's based in Arizona. And her name was, I'm trying to remember her name. It was like Linda or something. I forgot, I have her card. But anyway, so we didn't talk really in person. We just kind of exchanged cards. And I said, if it's okay with you, I'd like to exchange cards. I'd love to get in touch with you and see if there's a way that we can help each other. She goes, okay, sure. She pulls out her card. And that was pretty much the end of it. Then that night, she must have been staying another night. I flew home on Sunday night after sitting in the conference all day. And so I didn't get home till about 11 o'clock on Sunday. And I saw that she had sent me a connection request on LinkedIn. And this is what it said. Hi, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn. So she didn't use my name. She didn't say, weren't those key lime cheesecakes awesome at our lunch? Or she didn't say anything. And I was kind of like, whoa, I have to use her as an example when I give this webinar on Wednesday, which is what I'm doing. And not to, demean her in any way, shape, or form, but it would have gone a lot further and she told me she's a career coach and she writes resumes and LinkedIn profiles. So one would assume that she would know that, that you don't just send out a generic invitation. She had an opportunity to make it more customized and did not take that opportunity. And it did stick in my mind. And of course, I will respond to her. I haven't yet, but I will. And I will be very personal. And if you say you're going to follow up with someone and send them something or give them something, do it in a timely manner. It's just like, I'm still surprised by how many people ask me. I'm coaching someone in the UK who's looking for a very managing director level job in financial services. And she's like, Julie, do I really need to send thank you emails after an interview? And I was like, whoa, are you kidding? Yes. When you have an opportunity to thank someone, even if it's for a few minutes of time, absolutely, that's something that you must do. So always follow through and thank people. So let's pop into some of the common networking mistakes that people do make. And I probably alluded to a few of them already, but not making it easy for your networking contact to help you. And what I mean by that is that, I'll have people call me and say, hey, Julie, I'm a supply chain professional. I just lost my job at ABC company and so-and-so referred me to you and they said that you could help me. And then they're silent. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry you lost your job. So how can I help you? Well, they just said you know a lot of people. Now I'm starting to feel flustered and frustrated and like this person is not helping me at all in helping them. I'd love to help them, especially because they were a referral from so-and-so, but I don't know how. And you're making me work really hard to help you. So try to be very clear about how someone can actually help you. Forgetting that reciprocity is fundamental in the networking process. We already talked about that quite a bit. Disappearing after meeting or talking with someone. You don't need to be in touch with someone forever, or even that frequently if it's not appropriate. Don't disappear off the face of the earth, especially immediately after the meeting. And then try to lighten up. I mean, I'm not really very funny today, but I like to be funny and I like to joke and make light of things. And people desperately need to lighten up and laugh and infuse humor in your life. It's very important. It's a very good coping mechanism. So try to do that, obviously being appropriate. Communicating with video. Oh, somehow, let me just see something here. I don't know. I think I might be missing a slide, but anyway, so communicating with video. I don't know. There was a guy at the conference and he was actually spent half an hour talking to us about how to use video. And I was a little surprised because we were all pretty experienced professionals. But then I looked around and I realized that people were actually looking rapt with attention. And I said, my gosh, I thought this was all kind of common knowledge, but maybe it isn't. But communicating with video makes you feel a little bit like you're more with the other person, but it's still harder. So I'm a big fan of 30-minute or even 15-minute video meetings as much as possible. Most people don't have hour video meetings anymore. And then this is just an important thing because if something can go wrong, it always will. If you're using technology, it always will go wrong. So just try to test everything if you can, just to make sure everything's working. And those are really my tips about video. You kind of know the rest, I think. And then how do you stay in touch with your network? It's okay to just say, hey, how are you? We haven't talked in so long. I actually was thinking about you. And that's a nice thing. It's just recognition. Sharing good news. Who doesn't like good news? And, one of the great things is when people get jobs on LinkedIn or something good happens, post it. And then that's such a great opportunity to say, oh, congratulations. They're so lucky to have you. That's wonderful. And be able to share something about yourself. Inviting someone to something, it could be virtual, it could be in person, sending an article or a blog post, or just posting things on LinkedIn. Many of you probably have followers. I know I do. Asking for advice about something, that's always flattering. Sending someone a link to a podcast or a video or even a great book is a good way to do it. Inviting someone for something a little bit more social that involves food or some sort of beverage. Sharing competitive information. That's one of the things that my corporate clients love is when I say, hey, I'm coaching 11 people right now that work at different corporations. And they all want to hear, even if it's a different industry, they all want to hear the dirt and what's going on in these different industries besides what they just read, in their online newsletters. And speaking of online newsletters, there's a lot of good ones. I will often just copy a link and send it to someone in my network. Thought of you. You thought maybe you didn't get a chance to see this. And then, just giving someone an update on your job search. I interviewed at 3 companies. Unfortunately, I came in second at 2 of them, but it was really exciting. And I developed new contacts, and now I'm closer to knowing what I want to do. Certainly introducing people in your network, of course. And I like to send a little target list of companies. So sometimes if I'm looking for executive coaching business, I'll send some people that I know are my champions or pretty strong in my network. I'll send them 3 companies and say, hey, I've been researching these companies. It'd be great to coach there, but I don't know the head of the person who hires coaches. Do you know anybody in HR or otherwise? Okay. And then at the end of the day, networking will always be important. It's okay to just kind of stick your toe in the pool and experiment a little bit. You don't have to plunge all the way in if it's something that you haven't done much of or you're not that comfortable with. But honestly, I cannot think of any activity or task or achievement that can be reached solely on your own without any input, without creativity, without intelligence or data or systems from other people. Networking will always exist. And ultimately, when you are a strong networker, you will be approached regularly with requests and opportunities and leads. So, as I like to say, make networking a way of life, not just something that you need to do to find your next job. Scott?
Thank you so much, Julie. That was wonderful. Appreciate the call out from you. I am genuinely appreciative of everything you do for both myself and our community here at Cancer and Careers. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Just a few quick things before we get into the Q&A. And again, if you have any questions, please drop them into that Q&A box in your features panel, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. These are just a few resources that we have on our website to help with a job search. We hope that you will review them and read them through at your leisure. Maybe we can drop a link to the deck if you didn't get it already. You should have gotten it in an email this morning, but we can drop that in the chat as well if you want to download a copy of this for later on and click through. We also have some upcoming events that we hope we'll see you at. We are continuing our webinar series next month with balancing work and nutrition, which I'm very excited for. It's the first time we've done this title in this series, so I'm excited to have that. Then we have balancing work and cancer, which is sort of our flagship overview session that I will be leading myself. And then in August and September, we have a 2-part communicating effectively session that we hope you'll join us for. And then coming up on June 21st, we have our national conference, which is going to be happening on Zoom. You can join from anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, really, if you want to. It's going to be an all-day conference with different sessions and panels and speakers, and it's going to be really exciting. We'll have more information on those sessions any day now. And then we also have our West Coast conference coming up in October, which will be opening registration probably in another month or 2 for that. So keep an eye out on your email for that. And then here's my email. If there's anything that you think of after today, feel free to shoot me an email. We also hope you'll follow us on social media and stay up to date on everything going on here. And finally, I'm going to leave the CE slide up here for anybody who is requesting CEs. Again, the evaluation will pop up at the end of the session today in your browser, and you'll get an email tomorrow, no later than 5 p.m. with all of the information that you'll need as well. So now that, oops, I went too far. There we go. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, I have some questions for you, Julie. The first one I have is, I'm just pulling it up. What can I do to build my confidence? I've tried networking and just feel like I always hit a dead end and I'm having trouble getting back into it.
So that's a start small again and start with people whom you care about, even if it's a family member or friend, and just kind of give them some parameters and say, I'm really trying to build my confidence and get more comfortable with networking, kind of like a role play mock networking meeting. Try that with a few people and see, obviously make sure it's someone who's compassionate and kind. So, but just keep trying that, and then just kind of branch out to people who are your fans, from work situations, and try with them, and just have a singular goal when you're networking, and don't expect it to go perfectly because people are people and all sorts of things happen. But it is definitely one of those skills that the more you do it, the more comfortable and the more confident you grow.
I think you hit it on the head too of like start small. It can really be overwhelming when you think about like, I need to meet with 20 people. Like that's gonna just shut you down right away. But if it's like you just said, meeting with your best friend or your partner or whoever and having an easy conversation where you just kind of, update them on where you are and what you're looking for and start really small and build on that is
Yeah.
great advice. We're getting a couple questions actually kind of about the same thing, so I'm going to paraphrase a few of them. Which is, do you have any guidance for introverts who may struggle with the idea of networking more than extroverts?
Yes, and half the world are introverts. That's true. And so that is more about finding the platform that's more comfortable for you. So if in person as an introvert is not as comfortable, then start out by texting or email, scripting and preparing what you're going to say. And like when I commented on preparing small talk, that's a really helpful thing to do so that you kind of have your loose script, and then just practicing that, and then becoming more comfortable. Networking with other introverts, believe it or not, is interesting because you're both feeling a little awkward, and so you're not feeling overwhelmed by networking with an extrovert. Like I'm an extrovert, quite obviously. And so, sometimes I can overpower people and talk over them, and maybe that's not going to be that comfortable for you. So those would be a few quick suggestions.
As an introvert myself, who I always say I can put on a mask of an extrovert when needed, like
Yeah.
right now talking to everybody live on camera. I kind of I look at it sometimes too as like playing a role and like I'm gonna put on my suit, I'm gonna get dressed up, I'm gonna go to this event, I'm gonna pretend that I feel comfortable. And
Yeah.
you can almost kind of trick your brain sometimes into, and it doesn't last long. It's like 2 hours and then I'm like, I need to be home on my couch alone, not talking to anybody. But
Yeah.
I can kind of trick my brain sometimes too.
That's
Um,
funny.
the next question I have here, and this is a question we get pretty much every month, but happy to keep answering it. And it might be more for me than you, Julie. But when reaching out to my existing network to seek new opportunities, do I disclose the diagnosis or withhold it? It feels wrong to withhold such an important thing, but also presents a tremendous roadblock to getting a referral into their firm. Any thoughts?
Well, I think this is your answer. The only thing that I like to say, which I copied from Rebecca Nellis, or the executive director, or maybe Rachel, but that you don't talk to people and tell them what all of your health issues are. You don't meet someone and say, I have high blood pressure, and last year I had COVID 3 times, and I had a I have to take medication for diabetes. And so while I agree that your cancer diagnosis and your experience is very significant, to you, it isn't necessarily something that you need to disclose. so, but then I'll let Scott kick in on the cancer and career side.
Yeah, I think some of it too depends on who you're talking to, what your relationship is with them. If it's like a really close friend or someone that you worked side by side
Right.
for years and years and you know them really well, you might want to update them on a personal level. And if you do that, then you just want to express what your limits are to that and who you're disclosing to so that they don't accidentally share your information farther than that you may want it to go.
Yeah.
We always say that some people are it's a completely personal decision, and some people really want to share that and feel that it's important to share that, like in an interview or in a cover letter or some point in a job
Right.
search process, and networking would fall in that same process. But we typically recommend waiting until a little later on so people can really get to know you as a person and as a potential employee or a coworker before you start getting, letting them make their own conclusions about who you are and what you're able to do before
Yeah.
the time is right. So again, we've met people who want to disclose very early on in the process. Typically, we recommend waiting until a little later, but we're available to talk through specific situations that you're in. If you want to shoot us an email, cancerandcareers@cew.org, we can kind of brainstorm and work through one-on-one with people as well. We are actually a little over time, but I have one more question here. That is, are there people that you should specifically avoid networking with?
Well, that's an interesting question. I've never heard that before. I mean, a lot of people don't want to network with someone who fired them, or someone who they didn't like or get along with at work. But I don't think so. I think everybody's an opportunity to network. I mean, you may not get a positive response, but I would be hard pressed to think of anybody that you shouldn't network with, unless it's a person that isn't helpful or isn't kind, or has qualities that wouldn't help your self-esteem. Then avoid them, of course. But other than that, I think everybody's fair game.
I agree. I think like there's really no downside to it. The only thing I can think of maybe is someone you don't trust or someone that's,
Right.
done something in the past to, get in the way of your career or something like that. But that feels very small and slim and unlikely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. Again, we have so many questions in the Q&A. I still see it going up, so I'm sorry if we couldn't get to yours today. Please shoot us an email, cancerandcareers@cew.org, and we will get you an answer to whatever questions we weren't able to get to today. Julie, thank you so much for today, for the past couple of months that you've been here with us. And I can't wait to do it again soon.
I know. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining. Have a good day.